The doctor's hand cracked across her face, and in that silent hospital room, he destroyed his own career without even realizing who she was. The air in St. James Memorial was thick with urgency. Machines beeped, carts rolled, and the smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the halls. At the center of the chaos stood Dr. Ethan Grant, tall, confident, his surgical cap tilted slightly like a crown. To his staff, he was brilliant and brutal. He demanded perfection, and anything less was a personal insult. Across the nurses' station, Maya Brooks quietly flipped through a patient's medication chart. Her movements were precise, methodical, her calm presence grounding amid the noise. She had corrected a dosage error from the previous shift, saving a patient from a potential overdose. Ethan snatched the chart from her hands. "Who changed my prescription order?" "I did," Maya replied evenly. "The patient's kidney function couldn't handle—" He slammed the folder down. "Are you even qualified to be here?" His voice thundered across the corridor, heads turned. Nurses stopped mid-step. A junior resident pretended to check a monitor, desperate not to be noticed. Maya straightened slightly, refusing to look away. "Dr. Grant, I was only trying to—" Before she could finish, his hand flew. Slap! The sound cut through the sterile air like a scalpel. Charts slipped from startled hands. Someone gasped audibly. The young resident muttered, "Oh my God," under his breath. For a split second, even Ethan looked surprised by his own reaction. Then pride returned to his face like armor. "Maybe this will remind you of your place," he said coldly. Maya's cheek burned, but she didn't move. Her pulse pounded in her ears, yet her voice stayed quiet, steady. "My place," she murmured, "is right where I'm needed." Phones appeared. Someone was recording. A patient's family member whispered, "He just hit her." An older nurse stepped forward hesitantly. "Dr. Grant, that's enough. Stay out of this." He snapped, his authority echoing off the tiled walls. "You think this hospital runs without me? I save lives every day while you people take orders." Maya's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something colder, resolve. The hallway, once loud with activity, had gone silent. Even the monitors seemed to hush. Then, from behind the crowd, the elevator doors opened with a soft ding. Linda Patterson, the hospital's chief administrator, stepped out holding a clipboard. Her heels clicked against the floor as she took in the scene. The stunned faces, the raised phones, Maya's reddened cheek, and Ethan's smug expression. "What happened here?" she demanded. Ethan gestured dismissively toward Maya. "A nurse decided she knows better than a surgeon." Linda's expression didn't change, but her eyes did. Cold recognition replaced confusion. Her grip on the clipboard tightened. "Dr. Grant," she said quietly, almost in disbelief, "please tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." He scoffed. "The only misunderstanding is hiring people like—" "Stop!" Her voice sharpened like glass. Everyone froze. Linda turned toward Maya, her tone softening instantly. "Miss Brooks, are you all right?" The shift in energy was instant, from command to concern. Ethan frowned, confused. Then came the words that silenced the entire corridor. "Dr. Grant," Linda said, stepping closer, "you just assaulted the new hospital benefactor." The clipboard slipped from Ethan's hand, clattering onto the floor. A murmur swept through the staff like a wave. "Benefactor? Wait, she's the one?" Maya said nothing. She simply adjusted her scrubs, met Ethan's stunned gaze, and replied quietly, "You just reminded yourself of your place." The security guards arrived seconds later, parting the crowd. Cameras continued rolling. The doctor who thought he ruled the hospital now stood speechless before the woman he'd just humiliated. And as the narrator's voice closed in over the scene, they thought she was just a nurse. In 5 minutes, the hospital would learn who really signed their paychecks. Maya Brooks had always believed that medicine was sacred, a place where compassion and science met in the service of life. But somewhere along her journey, she'd learned that compassion often died first. At 34, Maya had achieved more than most could imagine. Born and raised in Atlanta, she had worked her way through nursing school while caring for her mother, Evelyn Brooks, a nurse herself, whose long hours and unending double shifts eventually took a fatal toll. Evelyn died of heart failure brought on by exhaustion and neglect from a hospital that valued profits over people. At her mother's funeral, Maya made a silent promise, clutching the folded nurse's cap placed beside the casket. "I'll fix the system that broke you." Years later, she fulfilled that vow. Armed with her medical expertise and a master's degree in biomedical engineering, Maya built Brooks Medical Innovations, a healthcare technology empire that revolutionized hospital systems with AI-driven diagnostics and streamlined patient safety protocols. What started as a small startup in her apartment became a billion-dollar company in less than a decade. She was called a genius, a disruptor, a visionary, though she didn't care for any of the titles. To her, success wasn't about money or prestige. It was about reform, about dignity, about ensuring that no nurse would collapse on a linoleum floor from fatigue while an indifferent administrator checked profit margins. But even as her technology spread to hospitals nationwide, she knew change didn't happen in boardrooms. It happened in hallways. That's why she returned quietly to St. James Memorial Hospital, her late mother's workplace. Disguised as a frontline nurse, she wore the same scrubs her mother used to wear, the same soft shoes, the same badge lanyard style. To everyone there, she was just Nurse Brooks, efficient, polite, and reserved. No one knew she was secretly auditing their systems, testing whether her innovations were truly saving lives or merely decorating reports. For weeks, she worked the same grueling shifts as everyone else. She saw nurses bullied for speaking up, junior staff scolded for mistakes they didn't make, and overworked teams left unsupported while higher-ups took the credit. Every night, she went home with sore feet and a full heart, not from exhaustion, but from purpose. She was collecting data, quietly observing, measuring not just performance, but humanity. And it didn't take long to notice the cancer at the heart of it all, Dr. Ethan Grant. Ethan was everything the medical press adored. Tall, photogenic, Harvard-trained head of surgery by 35. The media called him a miracle worker. His colleagues called him untouchable. But to those beneath him, nurses, interns, techs, he was something else entirely. Arrogant, condescending, cruel. He had a way of smiling while cutting people down. If a nurse corrected him, he'd humiliate her in front of everyone. If an intern hesitated, he'd bark, "Do you want to kill the patient?" His record was spotless because others cleaned his mistakes, quietly, out of fear. "People follow me because I'm the best," he once told a donor over champagne. "Not because they like me." That was true enough. People didn't like him. They feared him. And he fed on that fear. Maya had seen men like Ethan before, men who mistook authority for divinity. But in healthcare, that kind of arrogance was lethal. It trickled down, poisoning morale and eroding trust until good people lost their passion. She'd come to St. James hoping to find progress. Instead, she found the same corruption her mother had faced. Just wearing better suits. Still, she stayed silent. Observing, recording, waiting. She noticed the way Ethan demanded that nurses chart false time entries to hide overworked hours. She saw him berate a janitor for mopping too close to his shoes. She even overheard him boasting to the hospital administrator, "I could call half this staff incompetent, and the board would still give me a raise." It wasn't the medicine that disgusted her. It was the arrogance behind it. And more than once, she had to bite her tongue when he dismissed the nurse's opinions like they were background noise. The day before the slap, she had nearly exposed herself. During a surgery prep meeting, she noticed an error in a dosage order that could have harmed a patient. When she spoke up, Ethan mocked her publicly. "You're not qualified to question me," he said. "Stick to fetching charts, not rewriting them." She corrected it anyway, quietly, professionally. And when the patient recovered without complications, he took credit for it. Maya didn't mind. The truth always found its way. Her mother had taught her that. That night, as she walked home from her shift, she sat on a park bench beneath a flickering streetlight, staring at her reflection in a dark window. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Titles fade. Maya, the character doesn't. When you meet arrogance, let truth be your scalpel. She closed her eyes, whispering back, "I'm trying. Mama." But she had no idea that fate was preparing her test, one that would play out not in private, but in front of the entire hospital. And when that test came, when Ethan's hand struck her face, she wouldn't just expose his cruelty. She'd exposed the entire system that let him thrive, because sometimes the only way to heal a wound that deep is to cut it open for the world to see. The tension in St. James Memorial had been simmering for weeks, invisible to the patients, but felt by everyone who worked behind those sterilized walls. Dr. Ethan Grant strutted through the corridors like he owned them, his white coat flaring behind him like a cape. Every morning, nurses stiffened when they heard his voice echo through the hall, sharp, commanding, arrogant. He was brilliant, no one denied that, but he wielded his brilliance like a weapon. Each success inflated his ego further. He humiliated residents for stuttering answers, barked at nurses for interrupting genius, and made interns run errands that weren't theirs. The staff whispered about him in break rooms, but never aloud. The last nurse who filed a complaint had been reassigned to night shifts in the ICU, a quiet punishment that spoke louder than words. Maya saw it all. Every belittling remark, every eye roll, every moment of silent fear. She watched, not as a victim, but as a scientist taking notes. She documented each insult, each moment of verbal abuse, every manipulated report. She was building a record, a blueprint of the culture that her mother had warned her about. And though she stayed calm, a storm was forming behind her composed expression. It reached its boiling point on a Tuesday afternoon. The ER was packed. A car accident had sent 3 critical patients in at once. The operating room was chaotic, adrenaline pounding in every vein. Ethan led the surgical prep, his tone clipped and superior. "Vitals?" he barked. "Stable," Maya replied. "Then why isn't this dosage entered yet?" She glanced at the chart. "Because that's double the safe limit for a patient with internal bleeding." He froze. The entire surgical team looked up. "Excuse me?" "I ran the lab values," she said, her tone calm, clinical. "That dose could stop his heart." Ethan smirked. "And since when do nurses question surgeons? Do you have a medical degree I'm not aware of?" Her voice didn't waver. "Since my patient's safety depends on it." The silence that followed was electric. Someone in the back coughed nervously. Ethan's face reddened. "Do your job, or I'll have you written up for insubordination." "I already did my job," she said simply, placing the corrected chart on the tray. He snatched it up, skimmed it, and realized she was right. Again. The dosage had been miscalculated. He clenched his jaw and forced a smile for the anesthesiologist. Fine. Proceed with her suggestion. But humiliation sat heavy on his pride. He didn't forgive public embarrassment. Not from anyone, least of all from someone he saw as beneath him. Later that evening, he summoned her to the nurses' station. The floor was quiet, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant beep of monitors. "I need you to sign off on the report," he said. She scanned the document. Her stomach tightened. "You edited the dosage error out." "It's not relevant anymore," he said, his tone syrupy. "I corrected it." "No need to mention it." "That's falsifying a report," she replied. "It's against policy." His eyes hardened. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," she said softly. "A man who should know better." The words hit him harder than any slap could have. He stepped closer, voice dropping to a growl. "You think you can challenge me and get away with it?" She didn't flinch. "I'm not challenging you. I'm protecting the patient." And that was when his temper snapped. He swung, open-handed, fast, fueled by rage and ego, and struck her across the face. The sound echoed down the hall. The silence that followed was deafening. A nurse gasped. Another dropped her clipboard. Someone muttered, "Did he just hit her?" Ethan's breathing came heavy, his chest heaving with adrenaline. But then his gaze shifted. Several people were recording. The red lights of their phones blinked like warning beacons. "Put those away," he barked. "This is a misunderstanding." Maya didn't move. She straightened her scrubs, her cheek flaming, her expression steady. "You've made that very clear, Doctor." And then she walked away, quietly with the dignity that only made his rage look smaller. By midnight, the hospital's administration line was flooded. Someone had uploaded the footage online. Within an hour, it had tens of thousands of views. By morning, millions. Justice for Maya began trending nationwide. Comments poured in. "This is why nurses are leaving the field. That man shouldn't be anywhere near a hospital. Who is she? She deserves justice." Ethan tried to control the narrative. His lawyer released a statement. This was a professional misunderstanding taken out of context. Dr. Grant deeply regrets any distress caused, but it was too late. Screenshots of his smirk, the sound of the slap, and Maya's silent composure were everywhere, dissected on talk shows, reposted on medical forums, debated on news panels. Hospital board members scrambled. Emergency meetings were called. PR teams drafted statements that couldn't contain the wildfire. And just as the board prepared to issue a half-hearted apology, a new message hit their inboxes from an anonymous source. It was one sentence long. You may want to review who really owns this building before defending him. Attached was a document, the ownership transfer file for St. James Memorial Hospital. At the top, highlighted in gold letters, was the name Maya Brooks, primary benefactor and partner, Brooks Medical Innovations. The boardroom went silent. Somewhere in the hospital, Ethan Grant was still trying to convince himself he was untouchable, but his world, and his illusion of power, was about to collapse under the truth. The next morning, the entire hospital was buzzing. Every corridor hummed with whispers. Staff huddled around phones, eyes wide with disbelief. Overnight, the footage of Dr. Ethan Grant striking a nurse had gone from scandal to national outrage. Reporters had camped outside St. James Memorial before sunrise. Inside, the hospital board had called an emergency assembly. No one knew exactly what for, only that attendance was mandatory. In the grand auditorium, hundreds of staff members filled the seats, doctors, nurses, janitors, and administrators alike. The tension was palpable. Ethan Grant entered from the side door, still wearing his tailored white coat and arrogance-like armor. He greeted a few colleagues with a tight-lipped smile, expecting murmurs of sympathy. "The media loves a witch hunt," he said under his breath to a nearby surgeon. "They'll apologize once this is cleared up." He walked confidently to the front row, expecting to see the board chair waiting for him. But instead, the chair and several executives stood solemnly on stage. No smiles, no support. The chair cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Ethan smirked. "Good. Let's get this over with." The chair's gaze didn't move toward him. "Before we continue, I'd like to introduce someone. Our benefactor has requested to address the staff directly." A murmur rippled through the audience. "Benefactor?" The double doors at the back of the auditorium opened. The sound of heels against marble echoed through the hushed room. Maya Brooks entered, not in scrubs, but in a sleek black suit. Her hair was neatly pinned, her chin high, her presence commanding. She wasn't the quiet nurse anymore. She looked every bit the CEO she truly was. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The same nurses who had seen her humiliated yesterday now stood taller as she walked past. Several lowered their eyes in apology. Others couldn't hide their proud smiles. Ethan stood abruptly. "What is this?" His voice cracked slightly. "You brought her here?" The chairman's tone was calm, almost reverent. "No, Dr. Grant, she brought us here." He turned toward Maya and gestured with respect. "Everyone, please welcome Dr. Maya Brooks, founder and CEO of Brooks Medical Innovations, and our new majority ownership partner." The room went still. Gasps echoed across the auditorium like wind through glass. Ethan's mouth fell open. "That's impossible." Maya took the podium, her posture poised, her expression unreadable. She looked directly at him before turning to the staff. "Yesterday," she began softly, "I stood in these halls as a nurse. I followed orders, stayed quiet, and watched how people in this hospital were treated." Her voice grew stronger. "Today, I stand before you as the woman who signs every check that keeps this hospital alive." A ripple of astonishment moved through the crowd. She continued, steady and clear. "You see, I didn't come here to expose anyone. I came here to understand, to see the truth for myself. Because how people treat those they think have no power reveals everything about who they really are." She paused, eyes sweeping across the faces before her. Nurses wiping tears, doctors averting their gaze, administrators frozen in shame. "I built this company because my mother, a nurse, died serving a system that forgot her humanity. She believed in care, in compassion, in dignity. And I believed her. That's why Brooks Medical Innovations exists. To heal hospitals, not just patients." She turned toward Ethan. But yesterday, I learned that some diseases hide behind lab coats. The air was electric. No one dared move. Ethan tried to interrupt, voice trembling with forced confidence. "Miss Brooks, this is outrageous. You misled the staff. Her tone sliced through his words. "I observed your leadership, Doctor. You humiliated your staff, silenced truth, and endangered lives, all in the name of ego." He clenched his jaw. "You're ruining my reputation." "No," she said firmly. "You did that yourself." The board chair stepped forward, handing her a document. She glanced at it before reading aloud. "Effective immediately. Dr. Ethan Grant's medical license is suspended pending a full investigation by the state medical board." The crowd gasped again. Ethan stumbled backward, face pale. "You can't do this. I've saved hundreds of lives. And now," she said quietly, "you might finally understand the value of one." He opened his mouth to argue again, but his words caught in his throat when the security officer approached. Cameras flashed. The staff whispered. Maya held up a hand. "I'm not here for revenge." Her voice softened, the authority in it replaced by compassion. "I'm here for reform." A hush fell over the room. "I don't want another nurse to fear speaking the truth. I don't want another patient's safety buried under pride. I don't want another hospital to forget that medicine begins with mercy." She looked at Ethan one last time. "You used your hands to humiliate me, Doctor. I'll use mine to heal the place that let you do it." Silence. Then, applause. It started softly from a nurse in the back. Then another joined. And another. Soon the room erupted. Thunderous, cathartic applause that echoed through the walls. Some clapped with tears in their eyes. Others simply nodded, their faces filled with pride and awe. Maya stepped back from the podium as reporters rushed forward, cameras rolling, flashes sparking like lightning. Ethan stood frozen, a man watching his empire crumble in real time. As the applause thundered on, Maya glanced toward the exit, the same hallway where she'd once been slapped, where humiliation had turned into revelation. Now, she walked through it again, but this time, every step sounded like justice. Outside, sunlight streamed through the glass doors, and the narrator's voice closed over the moment. They thought she was just a nurse, but she was the cure this hospital didn't know it needed, and the mere arrogance could no longer avoid. Within 24 hours, the video of the confrontation inside St. James Memorial's auditorium exploded across every major social media platform. News anchors replayed it in stunned disbelief. Influencers dissected it frame by frame. Hashtags filled the digital sky. "We grace overpower," "You justice for Maya," "The nurse who owned the hospital." The headlines were everywhere. "Doctor slaps nurse, then learns she owns the hospital." "CEO goes undercover. Exposes corruption from the inside." "Humility in scrubs. The woman who redefined respect." Clips of Maya's speech, her calm, unwavering voice saying, "Power isn't given by position. It's revealed by how you treat people when you think they have none," spread like wildfire. News outlets praised her restraint. Human rights groups called her an icon of dignity. In one viral comment, a nurse from Chicago wrote, "She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard." By the end of the week, Maya's inbox was flooded with messages from hospitals across the country asking for help. So, she acted. Using her resources and newfound visibility, she launched a national initiative called Respect in Practice. Its mission was simple: to reform toxic healthcare culture, to rebuild from compassion up. The program included leadership ethics training, nurse advocacy boards, and a new whistleblower system that guaranteed protection for anyone speaking against malpractice or abuse. Within weeks, major hospitals signed on. Administrators called it revolutionary. Nurses called it long overdue. The media couldn't get enough of her story, but every time a reporter tried to turn her into a symbol of vengeance, Maya corrected them. "This isn't about revenge," she said during one televised interview. "It's about restoration. I didn't come back to punish people. I came back to make sure what happened to my mother, and to me, never happens again." Her voice, steady but kind, resonated far beyond medicine. Students quoted her in classrooms. Executives cited her leadership in seminars. Even clergy used her words in Sunday sermons. Meanwhile, Dr. Ethan Grant's fall from grace was swift and absolute. His medical license was suspended pending investigation. His once glamorous interviews with health magazines disappeared. His colleagues distanced themselves. His sponsors cut ties. A single video had stripped him of everything arrogance had built. He tried to issue a public apology through a press conference, his voice trembling, rehearsed lines barely masking his humiliation. Cameras flashed as he said, "To nurse, no, to Dr. Brooks, and to every healthcare worker I've disrespected, I'm deeply sorry for my actions." But the damage was done. Public sympathy was nowhere to be found. His words were met with polite silence. The nation had already chosen its hero, and it wasn't him. When asked by a reporter how she felt about his apology, Maya smiled softly. "He doesn't owe me an apology," she said. "He owes it to everyone he's ever silenced." That single line became the quote of the year, printed on posters, shared in motivational reels, etched into hospital walls. Yet, away from the cameras, Maya's most meaningful moment was quiet, private, and raw. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped over the Atlanta skyline, she visited the small cemetery where her mother rested. The air was still, the grass swaying gently. She carried a single white rose, Evelyn Brooks's favorite flower. Kneeling beside the grave, Maya traced her mother's name carved into the stone. Evelyn Brooks, nurse, mother, healer. She closed her eyes, whispering through the soft wind, "I finally fixed what broke you." "Mama," tears slipped down her cheek. "Not from sorrow, but from peace. You always told me grace was stronger than power." "You were right." She placed the white rose gently on the headstone. As the wind rustled through the leaves, sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow across the marble, illuminating the words newly engraved beneath her mother's name, "Grace over power." It wasn't just a motto anymore. It was a movement, born from silence, fueled by courage, and carried by a woman who had turned humiliation into healing. And across the world, people who once felt unseen, nurses, workers, dreamers, the quiet ones, began to believe that maybe, just maybe, dignity could still win. Under Maya Brooks's leadership, St. James Memorial transformed from a place of hierarchy into a model of equality that the entire medical community began to emulate. The first policy she enacted was simple but revolutionary: equal pay for equal care. No more silent underpayment of nurses. No more token recognition of the people who carried the hospital on their backs. Every staff member, from janitor to chief surgeon, attended respect-based training that redefined leadership as service, not superiority. She introduced nurse-led safety boards, where those who worked closest to patients finally had the power to report and correct systemic flaws. Mistakes became lessons instead of punishments, and transparency replaced fear. In 1 year, patient satisfaction doubled, not because of technology, but because dignity had become hospital policy. Brooks' medical innovations expanded globally, embedding Maya's story into its outreach programs. Hospitals in over 20 countries joined her Respect in Practice network, adopting her protocols for ethical reform. For the first time, healthcare didn't just talk about compassion, it measured it. Years later, Maya stood on stage at the World Medical Ethics Summit, addressing thousands of students and professionals. The lights dimmed as a massive screen behind her displayed a still frame from the moment that had changed everything. Ethan's raised hand frozen mid-motion. But instead of shame, the image bore her now famous quote in bold gold letters: "Respect is the first step in healing." The audience rose in a standing ovation before she even began her speech. Maya's foundation began offering annual scholarships for underprivileged nursing students, ensuring that no one would have to choose between passion and poverty. Each scholarship carried a name: the Evelyn Brooks Award for Compassionate Excellence. At St. James Memorial, a new hospital wing opened that same year, the Evelyn Brooks Center for Compassionate Care, dedicated to research on empathy-based patient recovery. The plaque at its entrance read, "Built not from wealth, but from grace," and somewhere far from the spotlight, in a small rural clinic, Dr. Ethan Grant rolled up his sleeves, treating patients under supervision. Gone were his designer watches and sharp arrogance, replaced by humility and long, quiet hours of service. He no longer boasted about saving lives. He simply tried to live up to the lesson that had cost him everything. Healing, he finally understood, begins with respect. They thought slapping a nurse would prove power. But that single strike revealed who truly had it. In one moment, arrogance collapsed, and grace stood tall in its place. What began as an act of humiliation became a turning point for an entire system. A man's pride tried to silence a woman's strength, but instead, it amplified it. The world saw that real leadership doesn't shout. It uplifts, and that the strongest people are often the ones who choose reform over revenge. Because Maya Brooks didn't just rebuild a hospital, she rebuilt the meaning of healing itself. She showed that respect is not a courtesy. It's the foundation of every life we touch. Titles can be revoked. Degrees can fade. But humanity, that's what makes you a healer. If this story reminded you that power means nothing without respect, like, share, and subscribe. Because somewhere right now, another person in uniform is being underestimated. A nurse, a worker, a quiet voice standing in the storm. And your share might be the spark that reminds the world what real power looks like. Grace doesn't shout. It simply stands and lets truth do the talking.